Hi guys, welcome to Smile Style Philosophy. I, of course, am the Legendary SMYLZ, peep gang. Okay, for those of you who subscribe to my page, you know that I live in New Orleans, Louisiana. And recently, we were hit by Hurricane Isaac. So during that time, I was out of power, I was out of energy, and I was out of internet for about 7 to 10 days. So now that everything seems to be fully restored, especially at my house, I have power, I have functioning internet, because it kept going in and out around the ending stages of the recovery. I decided to try to go back and check everything that I've missed in that week where we were riding out the hurricane. And I checked, my Facebook, my Twitter, my emails, and of course I was checking up on my YouTube account. And I missed one of the videos. I wish I'd have caught it earlier, but like I said, I was out of power. I'm subscribed to a chick named, I hope she doesn't mind me calling her a chick, but that's just how I talk. I'm subscribed to a woman named Christina Rad. I'm a fan of hers. And she did a tag video where she wanted people to give a video response to an atheist questionnaire. I think there's a study being done by Berkeley University, some guy named Baggett, I believe, and I guess he's just trying to figure out the mindset or the thought process of an atheist. As an atheist, it kind of feels like we should do the opposite. Like we should have a religious theist questionnaire to see what goes on through their head. But I guess since theists are the majority of the human population, we're like the outcasts, I guess. But I did kind of want to participate in the study. But since she wants to do a video response too, I think it'll be kind of amusing and fun. Not necessarily to answer these questions so people can get insight, but just to challenge myself and see how I would answer it. I might find some insight about myself that I never even thought of before. I might find out something about me that's like, wow, I never thought about that. I'm glad I know I think that way now. Okay. I'll try to run through it as quickly as possible, but I do want to answer each question in detail. So it might be 1 or 2 part videos. It should be 1 part. Like I said, I had to go to work and I'm currently getting mentally prepared for work, but we'll just wing it to see what happens. Question number 1. Were you raised atheist or did you have a religious upbringing of some sort? Well, yes, I had a religious upbringing. My mother was raised Catholicism. My mom's side of the family, majority of them are Catholic, or predominantly Catholic. My dad's side, however, is Baptist, Southern Baptist. So I have been to both churches, but I'm predominantly raised Baptist. My mom converted to baptism after she married my dad. I don't even know why that happened, but I guess she felt like having 2 different denominations was unequally yoked. And since my dad was the man of the house, she converted to baptism. So I was raised Baptist with a little sprinkle of Catholicism. I've been in both churches, so I do notice the difference between their rituals and their traditions, like the difference between how they baptize their congregation and how they serve communion. And I do notice that Catholicism does focus a little bit on the Virgin Mary, whereas baptism just focuses specifically on Jesus Christ and nobody else. If raised religious, when and why did you become an atheist? What was the transition like from religion for you, your family, etc.? Was this a quick transition or a slow one? Was it easy for you or difficult? Well, it was fairly easy only because I was sort of like an underground skeptical even when I did believe. Even when I was a hardcore Christian, there was still certain things that didn't make sense. Always contributed to naivete, even childhood naivety, because I've been questioning religion since I was young. But I always question it not to judge them, but more to get a clearer understanding of what my religion means. There's this phrase that they use it's called "you try the spirit by the spirit," meaning that it's okay to question authority, but when you actually do it, they don't really take kindly of it. But there were things that I truly didn't understand. So during Sunday school or whatever they had religious lessons, I was the guy that was bold enough to ask those hypothetical questions that most people didn't seem to answer, didn't want to touch up on. Primarily because what if their religion is found to be false? They didn't want to answer those. They didn't want to ask those questions. And when you do ask those questions, the response you get can't go through it, through the scriptures, if they can't find an answer from their experience or logic, they go to the same catch-alls. One is God is a sovereign God, which means he can do whatever he wants, and he doesn't owe us an explanation for anything. And God works in mysterious ways, meaning that we really don't understand, or we can never comprehend the process or the thought process of God when he does certain things. Because, think about it. Thou shalt not kill, yet he commands people to kill people. That's an obvious one. That's one of those questions that you ask when you're young. Something about that didn't make sense. But it was a pretty easy transition nonetheless, because I was always an underground skeptic. The confirmation of me just going fully atheist happened in 2005 during Hurricane Katrina. The worst hurricane to ever hit New Orleans ever. Okay, now I don't want to get you misled. It was not the damage or the destruction or the death that turned me atheist. It wasn't like I felt abandoned because of all the tragedy that was going on around me that made me say, oh, fuck God, no, why? How could anybody do this? It wasn't that. It was the people, the religious community that did not live in New Orleans that tried to justify why we were hit by Hurricane Katrina. We all know about New Orleans. It's a den of sin. A modern-day Sodom and Gomorrah, so to speak. We have a large homosexual crowd. We were the murder capital of the world for a number of years. We have a heavy drug community, and for the most part, we're very, very secular in New Orleans. And those who do not live in New Orleans said that Hurricane Katrina was sent from God to cleanse us of all of that. To cleanse us from the flamboyant homosexuality, decadent activity. To cleanse us from the murder and drug activity. But when you were actually here, you noticed that Hurricane Katrina wiped everything out unbiasedly. It would be one thing if the hurricane only targeted those who were living in sin, only targeted the homosexuals and the drug dealers, only targeted those who were morally bankrupt. But Hurricane Katrina didn't do that. Hurricane Katrina wiped out everyone unbiasedly with no segregation. Everyone was a victim, whether you were morally bankrupt or morally upstanding, whether you financially rich or financially bankrupt. It didn't matter who you were, what your race was, what your belief was, how you lived your life. You could be a prostitute on the corner, or you can be a holy roller. Hurricane Katrina did not care. Everyone was wiped out equally. Unjustified. Now, of course, they tried to justify saying, well, maybe they did something, or maybe it's a lesson learned, or some people probably came out better after Hurricane Katrina. But when you actually saw what happened, you realized that there was no separation. There was no weeding out. There was no, you guys go over here and be safe. Like they have the concept of the rapture, like those who were upstanding religiously could get caught up in the rapture and don't have to suffer from the tribulation. It wasn't like that. Everyone suffered equally, no matter whether they followed God or not. And that was my confirmation that there was no God. So it wasn't the damage. Question number 2, believe it or not. That was just one question. Wow. Question number 2. Overall, would you say that other people's beliefs in God is a good thing, a bad thing, or something you're indifferent about, and why? I say it's a case-by-case basis. I do believe that there are certain people out there that need to believe in God for their own survival and maybe to correct their behavior. There are some people that I think their belief in God confuses them. So, on one end, you might have a person, if they don't believe in God, if they feel like they've been just ejected from the matrix, they lose their motivation, they lose their inspiration, they feel empty, they feel like their life is worthless because they have nothing to look forward to an afterlife. Other people, they need that belief in God because maybe that fear of God stops them from doing things that are criminal or bad. They probably have somebody right now who's probably a murderer, but the only reason he doesn't murder is because he has that fear of God in him. And it's that fear of God and going to hell and the consequences of the murder that prevents him from being a murderer. Okay? Now they have other people, I can see that they're a little bit skeptical, yet they're just trying to maintain the faith because they feel like all the questions that they have, all the questions they have about the contradictions of religion is God testing them or the devil tempting them, one or the other. But they're saying, no, I can't think that way. It's just a test. It's just a test. I got to keep pushing forward. And they're torn. they're confused, but they feel like that torn and confusing feeling is either a temptation from the devil or a test from God. They haven't figured it out yet because they're torn. They don't really know what's going on. Now, I think for them it is kind of bad. And I think for those who may do something stupid if there is no God, or those who feel like there's no reason to live unless there's a God, it's good for them. It's bad for other kind, but for me personally, I really don't. I guess I'm indifferent. I don't give a shit. I'm going to answer questions 5 questions. That's it. Questions 3 to 5 in my next video. One sip away. Hold on.